Hey everybody, welcome back to Shri Views. As of recording this video, everybody's been talking about this TV show called Squid Game, but I want to talk about something that's probably even more scary. That's right, I'm going to talk about LinkedIn, specifically a meta game that's going on LinkedIn right now. Now, what's a meta game? A meta game, as the name suggests, is a game within a game, or to simplify it a bit, a predetermined strategy that everybody is utilizing at the moment. Now you see, let's assume that LinkedIn is a game and the overarching goal of the game is to get as much engagement, get as much eyeballs on your posts as possible. Now, the meta game is a predetermined strategy within that game to achieve that objective. And I'm talking in particular about a specific meta game that has evolved over the summer, and it ticks all the right boxes for me. This is about UI design or UX. It's a meta game, it's internet culture, it's all rolled into one, and I really wanted to talk about it. And if you're in the field of UX, you might have guessed this already. I'm talking about the which UI is better meta game. Now this strategy is very simple. You post two pictures side by side and you put the caption, which UI is better or which UX is better, and you press like or press one reaction for the left hand side one and press another reaction or comment for a right hand side one. And you get a lot of engagement out of that. But as is the case with most interesting things in this world, there are a lot of layers to this meta game, and I want to peel back these layers one by one. You see, at the core, you have the meta game itself, where the objective, like I mentioned, is to get as many eyeballs on your post as possible. And this is a very successful strategy for that. You have people putting in their comments about which UI they think is better based on their subjective opinion or their expert opinion. And that works well and good. But there's a second layer on top of that. And of course, as is the case with usually these kinds of tactics, there is a backlash. And this backlash comes from a seasoned UX professional, let's say, and they say things like, hey, this is a very cheap tactic that you're using. This is not the way to get feedback. Where is your context? Where is the business case? Can you provide a scenario? What are your performance indicators? And what do you really mean by better? Where does this user interface fall in the greater scheme of things? What's your timeline? What is, give me more information. But usually seasoned professionals don't stop at that. They'll call you names and they'll call you unprofessional and so on and so on. But what ends up happening is it just fulfills the original goal of the meta game. That's to get more traction, more eyeballs on the post. This trend keeps on moving. But then there's a third layer. It's a very subtle layer on top, which is the backlash to the backlash. Let me explain. In this situation, let's say that people are creating the posts and then there are the backlashers, let's call them, the seasoned UX professionals who are fighting back against it. However, then there is a backlash against the backlash, against these seasoned UX professionals saying that, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're new to this industry and they really want to get their word out. What's the harm in creating something like this? And of course, there is a harm in utilizing these kind of tactics. The senior UXers do have a valid point here. When you prioritize engagement over everything, you tend to lose a lot of nuance. You tend to inculcate some bad values within yourself. And that's the layer that I am the most interested in, because it really brings forth this issue in the UX discourse that I feel like we haven't been talking about. And this is my personal opinion, and that's that as someone who really had to pay his dues in the industry and work for a few years and volunteer UX services and so on and pay his dues, like I mentioned, in the discourse in the digital and physical spheres of UX, there is either apathy or there is hostility, and that's it. And this meta game really helps frame and discuss this in a much better light. You see, in the inner layer, the most basic layer of people trying to use this A/B test posting tactic to get eyeballs, there might be a junior UXer or someone who's new to this business who is actually genuinely willing to showcase their work and garner this criticism. Maybe they tried to post their work normally on the usual channels, and they were met with, like I mentioned earlier, the apathy. Maybe they just got some generic comments saying that, hey, keep it up, pay your dues in this business, just keep iterating on this design, and eventually you will find a big break if you're lucky, if you're in the right place at the right time, this and that. All the usual fluff, all the usual platitudes that don't really give you any actionable advice and are just superfluous. Let's say the junior UXer tries to use this tactic, and suddenly you have all the eyeballs in the world, not just positive, but also the negative ones. Instead of just popularity, now you also have notoriety. And that's where the apathy goes straight from apathy right up to hostility. The seasoned UXers are saying, this is not the way to do it. What is this? You're not following the right procedures. You're not providing the context. You're just using it to farm engagement, this and that. Suddenly there's such a huge pushback. And this cycle will keep repeating itself until we find a proper way to channelize these discussions, to have a proper mentorship, apprenticeship of some kind, a proper pipeline that goes from junior UXers paying their dues, so to speak, getting the right kind of feedback, inculcating the right values, instead of having to resort to these content farm kind of tactics and unnecessarily riling up the seasoned veterans. This isn't the first meta game that has come up. It's just one of the earliest ones that I've seen for UX and UI design in particular. I'm not blaming the junior UXers in this situation to come up with these tactics, and I'm also not blaming the senior UX professionals to push back on this. The issue there is this lack of nuance, lack of communication, lack of a proper channel, a proper physical as well as a digital space for people to come together in a community of practice. That's why I don't like using the word UX community. It's a UX business these days, and people have to resort to these tactics to get the eyeballs, and that's an unfortunate truth here. There is a sore lack of mentorship in this business. There's a sore lack of apprenticeship in this business. There's a sore need for doing all kinds of shadow work. Like, I remember when I was coming up, I had to do unpaid work. I had to volunteer my time and my services to gather my portfolio or gather a body of work, and that was just called, oh, that's paying your dues, that's how you break into this business. But it is a privileged thing to be able to do that, right? I recognize that as someone who has a support structure behind me. I was able to do volunteer work or do unpaid work, and there's so many different dimensions this can take, but these are the two main issues that I'm seeing here. There's a lack of a community of practice, and there is a lack of a proper pipeline, a proper channel for these proper discussions, nuanced discussions to happen. But now this meta game has played out itself. There will be more games in the future. I want to see how this evolves, and ideally there will be a holistic community of participation where newcomers get the in-depth feedback, the apprenticeship, the guidance that they deserve, and senior UXers get the respect that they deserve. And both of those things need to happen. And I'd like to know everybody's thoughts on this. What do you think is the issue behind this meta game? What do you think it will evolve into? Is this just the issue of social media? Is this not that deep? What are your thoughts on this? I'd love to know. And again, I'm trying my best to create this discussion around these phenomena that occur. If you've watched me stumble my way through this admittedly complex issue, I'd like to thank you for listening to me for the duration of this video. Please comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.